to the world. Subscribe now to the Hot 97 YouTube channel. It's Ebro in the Morning with Laura Stiles and Rosenberg.
It's Ebro, Laura, Rosenberg. You got it with us again, and we have another mayoral candidate on the program. Give it up one time, Isaac Wright Jr. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Blessed, man. We see your story on ABC for Life, man. Before we get into you as, that story is amazing, first of all. And before we get into your platform as you're running for mayor, we've never had a chance to speak to you. So we've heard 50's side of, coming, working with you and getting the show. But how did the idea to make it a TV show become a thing?
Well, that was 50's brainchild. I think in the first meeting that we had, there were some discussions initially in that meeting about doing a movie, and after about 20 minutes of listening to the details of not only what happened, but how I actually how I achieved my my freedom, he was like, no, this is not something that you want to just tell a story for an hour and a half or 2 hours. So this is a TV series. There's so many details, there's so many moving parts. I believe the public is going to want to watch you through this journey, episode after episode after episode. And so, he decided at that point that he was going to pursue it as a TV show.
Isaac, but how did you initially hook up with 50?
It was through a mutual friend. His name is Andy Mascot. They call him Hove. I met Hove through Darren Dean, the owner of Rough Riders, and the reason why he
what up, D?
The reason why he actually introduced me to Hove is because Hove had an illegal fight club called the BX Fight Club.
Yeah, we know Hove very well.
Yes.
Oh, you know Hove? Yeah, he's
of course.
Incredible guy, man. He's a good guy. But at this point, I didn't know him yet, and he was complaining to D that he was trying to get 50 out to his fights to do an intermission because he had Fat Joe there, Remy Ma, and a few other guys he already had there, and he wanted to get 50 out. And 50 was like, I can't do it at the time. 50 had his promotion license, so he didn't want to get caught on video on social media, at an illegal fight club and lose his license. Well, after I was introduced to Hove, gave me his poem about what was going on, and he explained to me, listen, I've been through 10 attorneys. 50 even passed me an attorney, and everybody said it was impossible. So, I heard what was going on with him, and I kind of understood the details, the intricacies of the problems that he was facing legally. And I told him I'll help you out. I got him legal in about 2 weeks. And 50 came out and performed and was like, how did you do this? He told 50 the story, and 50 said, listen, I want to sit down with this guy. Can you set up a meeting? And he set it up. We had that first meeting, and the rest is history.
Wow.
Your case that got you incarcerated, that was a state case or a federal case?
That was a state case. It was a joint task force that included the feds. But once I was facing life in prison, the feds they left it alone. Not only did I was facing life in prison, but I actually got life in prison because they could have came back too. But I got life in prison on just the kingpin charge, and I got about 70 years on the others. And so, as far as the legal system was concerned, I was buried alive. I was done. So there wasn't no need to waste more taxpayers' money on pursuing a federal case against me.
But that gave you insight into the inner workings of the criminal justice system on the state level, and I'm sure on the city level, which is a part of your platform for mayor.
Right.
What exactly do you want to go about? I mean, there's so much to work on there, but what's some of the low-hanging fruit that some people who are listening right now may think you're a great candidate for mayor that you think you can get changed right away?
Housing, the economy. I think there's some immediate changes that can occur, and obviously criminal justice reform.
But what's specifically in the criminal justice area?
Well, one of the things is something that everyone knows. There's a culture within law enforcement right now that law enforcement sees themselves as one thing, and the community sees law enforcement as something else altogether different. We have issues with police brutality. We have issues with police misconduct in general. There's a culture of silence and oppression, and the police really see themselves as this shining knight for some reason. And the public does not see that, and one of the reasons I think that's happening in that respect is that I think they've moved away from being public servants, and it's a you against me attitude. One of the things that I bring to the table, obviously, the obvious thing is my experience on the other side of the criminal justice system, my understanding of how it really works internally, and what that culture is and how that culture affects other people. But what's more important for me to say is that one of the reasons why, and the major reason why I'm here today, why I'm still not in prison, is because I was able to get a law enforcement officer to confess on the stand. He literally, put himself in harm's way and had to plead guilty to crimes, misconduct, in order to keep from going to prison. And so I understood the culture so good, 7.5 years later. And you got to remember, I was a paralegal in prison. By this time, I had litigated hundreds and hundreds of cases over the years, and my skills had sharpened to the extent, because I'd also tried my own case, but my skills had sharpened to the extent where I understood what it took to touch this man, to get to him as a law enforcement officer. And the only forum I had was a witness stand. Get him on the witness stand and get him to break and confess, and I did that. With my understanding, with the skill that I had to be able to touch him, to reach him, to know who he was as a person and who he was as a law enforcement officer culturally, I was successful in doing that. And he confessed, I'm home now. It's the same thing. I mean, across the country, the culture of silence, the culture of brutality in certain segments of the police departments are identical, across the country. So I believe I can do the same thing in New York City. I can bridge that gap between the police and the community, and return, or at least make NYPD a beacon for what it truly means to protect and serve.
Now, have you, with the economy, you was also one of your platforms. Talk to us about how you're going to start creating jobs, how you're going, whether these are city jobs, public-private partnerships. What's your strategy with the economy?
Well, one of the things that I think is important to understand, and this goes into, the mayor, who this person is, and what his capabilities are intellectually and intuitively. The next mayor is going to have to be someone who really, really thinks outside the box, because New York is in trouble right now, and it's in trouble obviously because of the economic downturn caused mostly by COVID, but it's also in trouble because New York does not have the ability to borrow its own money, to raise its own funds. That was taken away from New York City by Albany, and so you're looking at a city that's crippled and does not have the means to self-heal like most cities have. And so politically, you're going to hear all of these ideas, but you're not going to hear from these candidates, the things that's going to really matter. And this is what I mean when I say that. One of the things about my background is that I've been able to make the impossible possible, and I've been able to see things that other people can't see. New York is the capital, the financial capital of the world. It is the richest city in the world. There is no reason why New York as a city, with its standing, should be begging anybody. Right now, it has to beg the federal government and state government, or it has to raise taxes, which it can't at this moment and in this time. And so, if you look at New York as the financial capital of the world, what you have here is a city where all the ingredients you need is right there. For example, the next mayor should understand that New York City is a city where 113 billionaires reside. They call home. More billionaires live in New York City than in any city in the world. And so what does that mean? That means that these billionaires collectively has made over $1 trillion during COVID alone in profit. And so when you look at that reality, you have to come to the realization that even one of these guys can write a check and get New York out of its deficit overnight. But as a mayor, we're not a city that needs to beg. We're not We don't need to ask someone to write us a check. But what we do need to do, what the mayor needs to do, and what I would do from day one is to sit down with these guys, sit down with these billionaires. I don't need 50% of them. I don't need half. I don't even need a third. But I say to them, listen, let's be partners. Partner with the city, and let's create two magnificent programs. Let's create a young entrepreneur program, and let's create a free enterprise program. In the young entrepreneur program, you have guys, young kids coming out of high school with incredible ideas. They may not want to go to college, but they have the ideas that can take them to the next level, in their career, in their business ventures. So let's partner with them as a city, and let's give them grants to start their own business. On the free enterprise program, you have the guys with the greater ideas. We can have the next Google, we can have the next Microsoft, we can have the next Amazon with some of these ideas that these guys have right here in New York. Let's be their partners. Let's not only invest in them, but let's be their partners so that you can get a return. And let's create, the next Microsoft or the next Google or the next Amazon. This means that there's tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars being poured right here in the city based on the entrepreneurship of New Yorkers. Just that alone in 24 to 48 months, just that kind of a program alone with some of the richest people in the world can bring New York back on its feet. And these are some of the things that these candidates are not talking about, specifically because they don't have the background where they have been challenged to the degree that they have to get creative and to try to find things that's not there. And if they don't find it, create their way out, create their way to a solution.
And you believe that you can create these relationships with these billionaires, and just that alone is what's going to bring this economy back, or is there more to your economic platform than just these, grant programs or incubator programs?
Well, one of the things that you have to look at when it comes to New York City is New York City's economy. The foundation of New York City's economy is small businesses. And so when you look at the foundation of New York City's economy being small businesses, one of the things that you have to recognize is that this is the target. These are the individuals that we have to help. And not only that, you have to also remember that there's a tax base coming in when it comes down to and that it's connected to also my housing policy. But there's a tax base that New York City desperately needs that comes in when you pour money into these small businesses, when you help them to grow, help them to expand, help them to hire new workers. And so beneath those entrepreneur programs, beneath that is these thousands and thousands and thousands of small businesses where you pump money into these businesses, you help them grow, you help them hire workers, and that increases not only the financial foundation of New York City, but its tax basis so it can keep up with the deficit, that continues to grow year after year after year.
Isaac, talk about your plans for affordable housing in New York City and how you'll tackle homelessness.
Well, one of the things about homelessness is a disconnect between true inventory in New York City and people who are searching to find shelter, find a place to live. New York City has 10,000 or more. I believe it's more than that. Over 10,000 empty units in New York City that are not a part of the city's inventory to transition people from the street, into a transitional facility into permanent housing. And so the way I look at it is this: from a person who is struggling to find housing to someone who has housing, there must be a path. Must. I'm not saying should. I'm saying must. There must be a path to home ownership for all New Yorkers. There must be. And in particular, those people who are living in these housing complexes who are generational renters, who are born in a rental environment and who die in a rental environment generation after generation after generation. And if you look at that situation in New York, you have the agency called New York City Housing Authority. The acronym is NYCHA. NYCHA houses over 500,000 residences. And that's significant because what that means is if you look at NYCHA as a city, NYCHA is a city within the city of New York City. The reason why I'm referring to it as a city, specifically because from a population standpoint, NYCHA is bigger than Atlanta. It's bigger than Miami, Florida, bigger than Oakland, California. It's one of the largest, it would be consistent with being one of the largest cities in New York. And so you're looking at a city where no one owns their own home. So one of the things that is incredibly important for me as mayor is to change NYCHA, is to evolve NYCHA in not just a landlord, but a conduit to home ownership. So now these people who have lived hopeless lives when it comes down to having some kind of foundational worth, now all of a sudden, not only do they have worth, these are the people now who never had anything that can send their kids to college through leveraging that worth, that can sell that worth out to find a better place to live, that now has a foundation to some kind of future just by creating or evolving NYCHA from a serial landlord to a conduit to home ownership. And I think from a homelessness standpoint, from an affordable housing standpoint, having NYCHA as a conduit to ownership changed a paradigm in New York City forever, and more significant than it ever has before.
These are some very progressive ideas that you have, and they sound good, and I like them. In our experience of interviewing the mayor over the last 8 years, interviewing mayoral candidates, dealing with the police, dealing with private corporations, or and holding them accountable, the homelessness issue, here in New York that we have, which basically the issue is, as you pointed out, there's not a lot of inventory, and residences don't want homeless in their neighborhood. So you have a mayor right now who basically can't get any of the local communities to stand next to him when he's trying to find shelters, or so he ends up having to force shelters into places that people don't want them. Your plan has a lot of ruffling of feathers.
Absolutely.
That you're gonna, but how are you gonna get everyone to support? Because I hear the ruffling of feathers and I like it, but you also are gonna need support, because like even with the small business idea, one of the big problems with a lot of small businesses in the city is the fact that the NYPD and the Department of Health, they are so heavy-handed with small businesses that many can't even survive.
Right.
So if you're pissing off the police because you're holding them accountable, and then they're running around putting pressure on small businesses who aren't able to survive, you have this war going on outside,
right,
which we have right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which
right.
is, I don't think a lot of people understand that dynamic when they go into being a mayor, of trying to keep this balance of all of these factions pushing
right.
and pulling on one another.
Right. One of the things about factions is all factions have a head, and that leadership is either going to be someone who's going to be effective, or he's going to be someone who's going to be ineffective and fold under the pressure of his constituents. And so the NYPD, at the top of the NYPD is the mayor, and one of the most powerful forces in New York is the union, is the police union. Mayor de Blasio gets on TV and he screams about police brutality, and the next day 5,000 police officers don't come to work because the union is ruffling their feathers and pushing back.
Or the union supports Donald Trump.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have those things happening. Listen, one of the things about being a leader is not being afraid of losing your job, and not being afraid of who you piss off if you're doing the right thing. And so here's the way that dynamic needs to be dealt with. The first thing is that all of these people that you're talking about, these are their careers. A police officer, that's his career. That's how he feeds his family. A person with a small business, that's their career. That's how you feed your family. We're in an economic downturn. The tickets have to stop. And when I say they have to stop, I don't mean they have to completely stop. But this conspiracy to actually push small businesses out of business through these ticketing schemes, that ends. And at the end of the day, it comes down to the commissioner. If you want your job, here's what the policy is. This is what we're going to do for the next 4 years. And if you can't push this agenda on my behalf as mayor, then you have to go. I will find someone who will push this agenda. And so that's what it really boils down to. It really boils down to putting the people in place who are going to push your agenda for the betterment of the city of New York. And if there's problems with the union, with the police union, listen, what a lot of mayors don't understand is the power that they have. There's not just one police union. There's two. There's an auxiliary police union. And if I have a problem with the police union as mayor, the NYPD union, not a problem. I got a friend to the left. If I lose you as a friend to the right, I'll go ahead and I got a friend to the left, and we're going to make this happen. One way or the other, we're going to make this happen. And it goes back to what I was saying, that the ingredients is there for a successful mayorship. It's there. You just got to understand that it's there. You got to see that it's there, and you got to know how to use it.
You also pointed out, I don't know the backstory on why New York City is not able to raise its own funds and get loans on its own behalf without approval. I don't know the backstory on that, but I'm sure Albany has something to say about that.
Yes.
How are you going to manage that relationship? Because the mayor of New York City and the governor of the state of New York always have problems.
Absolutely. Because the governor wants to control New York City. Like I said, it's the financial capital of the world. Who would not want to control New York City? The governor has Albany. That's his city. But think about it. You got the most powerful person in the world sitting up there in Albany. And if you've been to Albany, you can look at where that city's at as a city. And then you go down and you see that diamond called New York City. And you have a person that's running New York City that's a mayor, not a governor. And so, when the most powerful person in the state looks at a mayor and says, well, you're running the most powerful city in the world, you're running the financial capital of the world, but I'm the governor. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to control your livelihood till you you bow at the knees.
Till you capitulate.
Basically, and that's what this is about. And the mayor of New York City is going to have to find a way to be able to get along with Albany and to be able to garner the respect of understanding, listen, I'm not bowing at the knees. That's just not what's going to happen. I'll work with you as a partner for the betterment of the people in New York City. I'm not bowing at the knees. And if because I don't bow at the knees, you decide that you're going to try to strangle us more, I got these ingredients over here in New York City. I mean, I got Wall Street, and this is what we all have to understand. We have to understand it. When I say, I don't say it lightly when I say New York is the richest and the most powerful city in the world, and everything New York has is right there. Everything we need as a city to grow and turn the situation around, with or without Albany, is right there in New York City. Everybody comes to New York City for their dollar. I don't care where money is distributed anywhere in the world. They come to New York City for their dollar. How come the mayor of New York City can't do the same thing? He can. He can. It's an issue of the way in which he sees those moving parts and the way in which he's going to use those moving parts in his favor without having to bow down to Albany to make something happen and to get into so much debt in terms of owing other politicians that he can't do anything for his constituents because he's bought out, because he's had to beg specifically and make deals for every single thing that he's trying to do. And a mayor of New York City should never have to do that. He controls too much wealth and he has too much power.
Isaac Wright Jr. running for mayor of New York City. Laura, how many other candidates are there? 13?
106.
No, I think there's 19.
19.
I think.
I like that.
No, there's 106 city council seats coming open. That's what's happening, because that's happening too at the same time. There's a lot of voting going on. It's a very important time in New York City. And Isaac Wright, lastly, before we let you go, why should people trust that you want this job? Politics is not what you've been in the past. Why do you want to do this job?
I am that individual. I'm going to be that mayor and that candidate who doesn't shake hands and tell lies. And if you look at the secession, the continual candidacies that resulted in mayors who's literally not changed the lives of the average New Yorker, not a single bit. My background speaks for itself. I've fallen on the sword for the people of New York City. I've done it for individual after individual after individual over the years, hundreds and hundreds of people over the years. I put my life before theirs. Even when I was in prison with a life sentence, I got other people out. I put their lives before mine, before I went to get myself out. And so, with a city of like New York, my background speaks for itself. I'm that guy that's not going to shake hands and tell lies. Your life will change. And I don't care whether it costs me a second term. That doesn't matter to me. The only thing that matters to me is that I'm able to help the people of New York City, that they're able to feel and see the changes in their lives. And that's something that I'm going to do. And when I say whatever I say I'm going to do, it's going to happen. Or I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to tell you I'm going to do something that will not happen just to get in office. I don't need to do that, and I've never done that. That's not my background. So at the top of all that is I'm a candidate that will not shake hands and tell lies.
Isaac Wright Jr., pleasure to meet you, and thank you for your time today.
Great
Good
meeting
luck.
you,
You're very
Isaac.
welcome.
All right, take
Thank
care.
you. Y'all take care.